What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Editor Brian Wagner, and this week we have Nero Deliwala on the show. Nero, what's going on?
Oh, same old, same old. We just got back from Maryland, where it was super cold, racing import versus domestic.
Did you put heat in your engine today?
We put heat in every run, every in between. We fired it up in the pits quite often. Yes, there was lots of heat.
I had so many people messaging me about that. They're like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Just look, can we not talk about it? Can we not? I'm traumatized forever." I honestly, I can say that's one of the coldest events that I've been to in a while, and it definitely, when you're racing in that cold of temperatures, it puts a fun little spin on things, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like it's. I mean, obviously, it was for a lot of people hard to get down the track. I mean, the temperatures are way below what they, it's ideal, run conditions. So, it's just kind of the gamble you take when you have that event. The first weekend of November. It's right on the edge when the weather starts to change up there, and so either you get that 1 week where it's really, really nice, maybe 60s, even 70s sometimes, or you could get it where it's literally like freezing, which at some point in time, I think during the day it was freezing because all of our cars had ice covered all over the windshields when we would come out of the hotel.
I actually had to cancel a photo shoot because of the frost and ice on a car that the guy couldn't keep it in his trailer. So we ended up not being able to do the photo shoot because we couldn't get out in time where the track wasn't hot and his car didn't, look like it was from, Central Michigan.
Yep.
And I've been to that event multiple times. Like you said, it could be hit or miss, but that is the coldest that it's ever been there. But the weird thing was, like, that evil dew point never really crept in. It just got cold.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it started cold and it ended really cold.
And the thing was, Monday I walked out of my hotel in shorts and a t-shirt and was perfectly comfortable. I'm like, where were you about 3 or 4 days ago?
Exactly. Well, I mean, I got to give Jason Miller props. He did change the schedule around on Thursday to be able to test or cancel the testing so we could get at least that qualifier in for the day. And he was able to get the event finished by, hopefully a little bit after sunset. So it wasn't super frigid and it wasn't dangerous where, we could have a lot more issues. So, he did a phenomenal job adjusting to the weather conditions.
Yeah, he did a brilliant job race managing that for the conditions and keeping everybody safe and getting things done. But unfortunately, like that event, it's a lot like Super Streetcar Nationals in Vegas. People just blow stuff up. I mean, that's like, it's those two events. I've been to both, and it's like, for some reason, it's like there's an internal clock on some people's gear that, like, oh, it's time this event, I'm just going to scatter myself for no good reason.
Yep. People are always going personal bests and, pushing the envelope. So it's what makes that event extremely interesting.
Duty cycle. That's the phrase people need to remember. All of your parts have a duty cycle, and you don't want to exceed that duty cycle because when you do, it never ends well, ever.
Yep.
Now, it's interesting, the import racing world and how all that works, and kind of the way that it exploded in front of us here in the United States, back late 90s or so. Kind of, to kick things off here, what got you into cars and racing? Because this is not a normal hobby or business for any sane individual.
No, I mean, I didn't ever want to be in this industry, actually. It's funny because, I mean, I've been into cars, was really into tweaking my own stuff. Was big into car audio in high school, and tried to be very involved myself, did a lot of the installation stuff myself. And then that fell into, ended up getting a Toyota Supra in the late 90s, I think 97. And before you know it, I'm hanging out at the, corner where all the guys do, which sometimes is Best Buy or used to be Circuit City. And I get invited to go out to the street races. And so I'm sitting here thinking this is like an invitation to get jacked, like what the hell is this guy talking about? But I don't know, the curiosity got to me, and I followed along and stayed in the car, and I was like, oh my God, this shit's like out of a movie. And oh, sorry about the cursing, but
that's fine.
got into it, and was just hooked. Honestly, like I got beat early on quite a bit because I didn't have any idea of how to launch the car, how to drive the car, or to shift it at red line. None of that was ever taught to me. I've never read any of it. And so I would get beat. So my personality is, to be competitive all the time. And so I started learning, how to launch the car, how to drive the car. And one of the things also I knew, like, hey, my driving skill's not there yet, but I can buy parts and mod this thing and make power. So I would overcome the deficiency of not being able to drive great early on by just making huge horsepower. And before you know it, the two started to mesh together where, I started learning, what tire pressures to run and what tires to use and all this stuff. I mean, it's funny because you can read about it now all online. You can ask questions on Facebook groups. None of that was out there. It was, you're hanging out on the street corner with your import car, talking to a guy with a Camaro or a Mustang, and they're just sitting here going, we don't know what the hell you're doing, so it basically evolved just by having to learn a lot of it on your own. And then we continue to teach a lot of people, a lot of customers, what we had found actually works for the platform.
It's funny. People seem to forget, back in that we'll call it the first modern street racing boom back in the, that pair of the 90s, how borderline sketchy it really was. And it was also comically entertaining how slow the cars were back then compared to they are now. But we thought we were just super fast, where nowadays, a Mustang was making about as much as a Toyota Camry makes these days. It's crazy how far we've come, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like back then, like a 12-second car was fast, like I say it to my guys in the office here, my wife's minivan will run that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's hard to wrap your mind around the fact that there are SUVs that are faster than Corvettes were in the 1990s. That's insane to me. It's kind of funny. You get in that scene, you start hanging out with people, and it just kind of it starts progressing. And you find a lot that you get the audio guys that got into racing, and you get hooked. What was it, the thing that really hooked you about the motorsport side of things?
I mean, initially, I just love to win. I think everybody does, but I have just a big drive to continue to try to keep pushing and keep figuring it out. And I always want to figure out something that somebody else hasn't already. So that really pushed things along early on, even street racing days. And then before you know it, I'm decided to build my car into what was a pro drag radio or pro street tire back in the early 2000s for NHRA Sport Compact. So that project started getting going, and I had all the parts, and I already had a plan, and it was just a matter of executing that plan and putting the car on the track. Now, I didn't ever expect to be racing for a championship or anything else. I mean, I always dreamed of it. It was always my goal, but I didn't know if I'd be able to afford to do it, if I'd be able to hit all the events across the country, and so forth. And we made it happen. It wasn't easy. I mean, a lot of the other racers that are in the various areas, we'd over that first year borrowed parts and shipped parts, to them to replace. But the community had come together really well, and it was just a lot of fun. So we were able to continue keeping that program going the first year, and then it snowballed.
Racers are really awesome at making poor financial decisions and destroying their free time. That's a common trait we all have. Besides wanting to win, it's like we hate time and money, right?
Yep. Well, because my wife isn't huge into cars, but we took the car to Australia, and so all the way across the globe, and the event actually ended up raining out. And she goes, okay, so it's the makeup tomorrow. And I'm like, no, it's not that kind of event. And she's like, wait a minute, you're telling me you flew 24 hours, you shipped your car there to go to a race, to not end up racing, to fly back. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, and you think that's fun?
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, I do.
Yes, I do. Next question. Right. That kind of parlays into, something else I was interested in. I remember far back, seeing Titan Motorsports back in the day, first getting into cars in general, is a huge name in the import racing scene. How did you decide to start Titan Motorsports? Was it a necessary evil to feed the hobby, or was it a business opportunity that you saw?
So it's funny because I never wanted to be in the parts industry. I, had been around it and I felt like it wasn't a great business to be in. I really was focusing on wanting to be like in e-commerce, more like as an e-commerce developer, like a computer programmer. And I'm talking to one of my friends who owned a shop, and I go, "You need to get online. I'll make the website for you." I was kind of pitching myself to be the IT admin, get this business kind of going for him. He goes, "Why don't you just do that yourself and I'll help you and you sell the parts." So I said, "Okay, fine. I'll start selling these parts on the side. They'll pay for the race gas, pay for the truck payment so I can go to these races." And then the whole plan was, I'll do that on the side. I'll go get a job 9 to 5, and I'll use my vacation time to hit the events I want to hit, mainly in the Southeast. And before you know it, because I was very involved in the Toyota Super community from early on when I was just an enthusiast. So people would ask me questions all the time and I'd always answer them, and I knew the whole mod platform. And before you knew it, people were asking me, "Hey, can you just sell me that?" And for a long time, I was like, "No, I don't sell that. But you call this guy, call this guy, call that guy," and it would happen. So before you know it, they were just calling me, and we were selling them the parts, and it turned into a full-time gig very quickly.
You went from being the consumer to the dealer in a hurry, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's funny.
I'm
It always seems to work out that way, right?
That's the problem. I'm still a big consumer.
Yeah. That's the from the spicy pharmaceutical trade that we have learned that lesson, is that you don't want to be the consumer as well as a salesperson, because you end up wasting all of your profits on things that seem like a good idea at the time. And that seems to be our big issue in the racing industry. What's it been like, kind of, being the captain of the Titan ship, and, kind of carrying the flag for an entire community and beyond?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of pressure, in some ways, but it's a lot of fun too. A lot of people always expect us to win, and in racing, anything can happen. So, quite often, I got to say, losing, especially even with a Copper Supra, is actually not that bad. I mean, yeah, nobody wants to lose, but like some of the people who've won have been so elated just to have been able to line up and beat that car or even race that car. It's pretty cool to see, that people, hold our brand in that high regards. So that's been a lot of fun. I mean, continuing to push with manufacturers and vendors, the sport compact, and the fact that, it's a sport that, is here. Early on was difficult. Like a lot of people didn't really want to make, sport compact parts. They didn't necessarily want to stock sport compact parts. But you've seen like companies like CP Pistons, Carrillo, Manley Rods, Brian Crower. A lot of these companies have now a very heavy focus in that sport compact turbocharged market, and it's done very well for them. So I think early on, giving some of those manufacturers a push to pursue our marketplace, which would support all the individuals, was a pretty big deal. It was quite interesting because people would fly in to visit us and ask us questions to see if it was even worth getting into the marketplace.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break because you've very nicely set the stage for a really cool question I'll ask. So Manley dual drag series valve springs provide the load capabilities of triple springs with the reduced size and mass of dual springs. This provides improved valve train control and a higher RPM potential. An additional benefit over triple springs is the reduced friction, which greatly reduces load loss, while a multi-step surface enhancement improves fatigue strength. Check them out at manlyperformance.com. We're back here on the Dragzine Podcast with Nero from Titan. And Nero, you kind of talked about the issues almost you ran into first starting in the import industry. And I think it's interesting because at the same time, I want to know, what was it like to being a part, such a big part of like the import racing history over the years. You know, you talked about the Copper Supra, and you know that car is its own legend, and kind of being that part of history. Is it something you even thought about, or has it just been kind of one wild ride?
No, I mean, it's been a wild ride for sure. It's not something I thought about. It was never my goal to have, built a brand like we have and have iconic cars. It was, purely, I just wanted the car to look good. I wanted it to perform well. Of course, everybody wants to have a car that, looks unique and is photographed. But it was purely just, out of personal enjoyment. The whole point of starting Titan Motorsports and selling the parts was to pay for that race gas, pay for the truck, pay to be able to go to events. So, it was never supposed to make any money. It was just supposed to feed the hobby. So, I mean, we still continue on with that mantra, and of course it's grown and it's gotten sometimes out of control, but we still really enjoy, the core of it, which is just being out there with the fans, the racers, and going, toe to toe with some of the best guys in the world.
I remember seeing that car with the ADRL, and that was wild because my dad had never been around really fast imports. And the first time that car spooled up, that was different. That was an experience because I'd never been around an import that was that rowdy. But we were both just kind of taken aback, like, all right, that's got a little bit of rip to it. Is that something that you guys were kind of, a similar theme you saw kind of bridging that gap over the years?
Yeah, so like we initially, when we went, like, when it was pro rear wheel drive and the sport compact days, we decided to build, chassis cars versus like 3/4 cars, because we would in the future have like possibly more flexibility to go race with like some of the domestics or whatever. And I felt just in general, the rear wheel drive platform, there was a lot more racing that could be possible with that platform versus the front wheel drive. So I want to say we went to one of our first ADRL events in the 10.5 extreme class.
Yep.
And with Brad Personette, and we actually won that event. And I remember it was one of the publishers had been like, "Why don't you ever do this?" And so I looked at it. I was like, "Okay, well, let's go." We went and we ended up winning, at like 2 a.m. And that just started the bug all over again. It's like, okay, we can race here with these guys and be competitive. And so we have to, an open rule book as far as like we can run pretty much any power plant, any turbo size car, any weight. So we knew we could get the car hopefully as light as possible. And so we just continued to pursue it. And, it snowballed to a point where, it was becoming a big thing as ADRL, as that series even grew.
Yeah, the ADRL, when it first came around, like, if you weren't there, you didn't understand how insane those events were, and like just the sheer level of, I don't know if there's a word to describe just the machismo and horsepower and everything that was on display, because there were no, like, I don't even know how to put this, tame cars. Even that Outlaw 10.5 class, I remember seeing, you'd see a pro mod run in a pro extreme, and then you'd see basically what looked like the exact same car on a little tiny set of tires. So it took a lot to be competitive in that area, right?
Yeah. I mean, until we went to that first race, I didn't even know if we could be really competitive. We'd never run any good ETs on that tire, had no idea where we would land. And, it started, obviously it worked out pretty well, and we've won a lot of ADRL events, and like I said, it snowballed. But yeah, I mean, like, that series grew, and like you said, it developed, I mean, into a whole nother beast as the power plants continued to start making bigger and bigger horsepower.
And you talked about running the NHRA sport compact series. Kind of talk about what it was like being again, it's like pioneer days, man. That's like, it's like the the Don Garlett's Connie Coletta kind of deal, where you were one of the first people that was kind of on that train like they were back in the day with nitro cars. You guys did it with imports. Kind of talk about what that was like.
Well, it's pretty funny because when you're actually doing it, I looked at other people that way. People like Steph Papadakis and Ron Bergenholtz, R.R. Slanian, these guys, the whole Bullish Racing team, like these guys were just on a whole nother level, just way up there, in my mind, Craig Paisley. And I was like, these guys are huge, like I could never race like in a class like they race. They've been doing this for so long and at such a high level. So it's pretty funny, like a lot of those guys, once you get to know them, we're all, just like all the other racers, very helpful. They would give you pointers and tips if you asked, and they help, pave the way for us to become a bigger, entity in racing.
Now, the Copper Supra, again, like I said, there's very few cars you can use the word iconic with, and I honestly think that's one of them. Just like when people say Supra, it's like that's one of the cars that comes to mind for me personally. Either that or a silver Supra, just because it seems like so many of the fast ones are silver. It's like silver one of the Titan car. What was it like for you? Like, when did you know you've like made it with that car? When it was like, all right, we've really got something special here.
So, when BF Goodrich wanted to do a poster of the car, and they, we had been thinking of changing the color at some point, and they said, have you thought about changing the color? Because, they knew as a black car, it may not photograph as well as like something bright and vibrant. And, we said, yeah, we actually have. And so that basically snowballed into, we completely changed the color of the car and graphicked it up like you see it, now. And we, put it on the BF Goodrich poster, which now if you go on eBay or anywhere else, you can't even find or buy anywhere. And that was probably a big stepping stone when they were literally giving those out at every car event, and people were waiting in line to get those posters, and people were sending me pictures that they had hung them up in their garage or framed them. That's when, it became a big deal. I felt in my mind. I mean, it's a huge leap forward.
Oh yeah. I mean, you look at it this way. It's like I put that on the same level as, Ron Fisher with that Chevelle that did the big wheel stand on the Flowmaster poster. It's one of those deals where your vehicle influenced an entire generation of enthusiasts, literally. And I think that that's something that some people might get lost on some of us that, don't necessarily partake in that end of things, that like how important it is to be able to kind of create a brand like that and be able to perform and take it forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to, growing up, people got pictures of Lamborghini Countaches, and you see a friend's picture, and it's like, oh, wow, that's my car on your bedroom wall. Huh.
Well, that's kind of how it was. And, people still come to us at the races and tell us like how big of a deal it was, watching us like, in Turbo Magazine and watching the updates and seeing the racing that we were doing when they were younger, so it definitely helped, like you said, push that next generation into more sport compact turbocharging. And I think it definitely helped grow the industry overall.
And I think with that, it also, with what you guys did and others, I think it also gave a certain level of legitimacy to like hardcore import racing, because the running joke for a while is, oh, it's a bunch of front wheel drive Honda guys that just, make noise and can't do anything. But then it's like, oh, well, what's the super stuff all about? Or, these fast, two-wheel drive cars, all this, rear wheel drive cars. And all of a sudden that kind of started breaking some hearts, right? And that had to be kind of fun to be a part of that movement as well.
That was, it was ultra competitive. I felt it was unique because nobody else was willing to take that big of a gamble, maybe that big of a risk, because like we literally are racing against some of the best guys out there, and it's still even some of the best outlaws still today, raced ADRL. So it was pretty tough, racing, but we decided to kind of do it. And, we did feel like, okay, hey, we could represent the imports here, while everybody else was domestics, to show what the capability of that platform was and what it could be even going forward.
It's funny, the last couple of years, you guys got into, the more the outlaw radio racing. And we talked about this World Cup. I will never forget. I literally laughed out loud when I saw people when Duck posted, "Oh, this car's coming to," it was like lights out or something, like, "Oh, it's just some import." I'm like, oh child, you have no idea what's coming your way. Like, I'm watching, the car at TX2K. Like, I saw you guys prepping there. I'm like, I see exactly what they're doing. They're getting the data they need to go to Duck's race. What was it like to walk into that world where it's even a little bit, it could be a rough crowd, and you guys walked in there and you got some people shook in a hurry?
So, like, it's pretty funny because, yeah, I mean, definitely with the X275 crowd, a lot of people didn't know anything about who we were. Nobody felt like we should even be qualifying in the top 16. They were just like, that's just one of another 80 guys who are not going to make the field, So it was pretty cool. We did see some people, especially racing in the higher ranks, that we'd race with at ADRL and so forth. And they were like, they would say the exact same thing you did. They're like, these guys just have no idea. They're like, they're going to burn you down, and they think you don't, you can't get the turbocharger to spool up and all this stuff. And they're going to try playing the games. And he goes, but you guys have done it for so many years. Everybody's tried those same things. So we've, improved the combination so that we wouldn't obviously just give you an easy win. And then I got to say, when we qualified and many others didn't, you kind of could hear the rumblings. You could kind of feel it, like we didn't deserve the spot type of thing. And my opinion was like, well, if we didn't deserve it, you should have bumped us out. Like that's the way it goes. That's what I really like about drag racing is, it's starting line to finish line, and it's the math, right? Like, you run the best ET, and that's part of qualifying. And, you run the best ET and you leave, on time, and that's how you win races. It's not a judged event. It's not an opinion based event. It's pure racing, it's pure.
Scoreboards don't lie.
Yep.
Well, again, it comes down to, like, if you were somewhat of a drag racing nerd, you would look at the writing on the wall, you'd look at the rules and be like, I know these guys are going to come in and be tough, because the way the rules are written, it's not necessarily a soft point, but it's something that no one had explored the combo that really knew what they were doing. There are guys that had tried to make the field with like 4Gs, but they weren't, built the same, that, they didn't have the knowledge. And it was sort of like Ryan Milliken with his diesel. I'm like, y'all don't understand. These people are smarter than what you think. They're going to be able to hit that rule book hard and give poor John Sears more gray hairs. Yeah. It's just like, and like looking at a small block Ford and being able to exploit maybe a loophole there. There was a spot on the rule book that car fit in very well. And guess what? These guys knew what they were doing, and they kind of, made a lot of people look stupid.
Yeah. I got to say, I got to give credit to John Sears. I mean, he's dealing with the most amount of combinations, I think, of pretty much any class that's racing, at a high level. Totally. And he's done a phenomenal job of getting parity. Do I always like some of the rules that he changes? No, I don't. But he's worked very hard to be impartial and keep parity. And even like last Sweet 16 that we raced, it was a perfect example. We were lucky enough to qualify number 2. In eliminations, there were 2 or 3 other cars that were ETing quicker than us round after round. And yet we were still able to, make it to the finals and end up winning against the number 1 qualifier. So if the race had been lopsided where, teams had a huge advantage, we would have never been in that position. So I feel like in any of the X275 races, really any of the top 4 or top 8 could win at any time. They just got to have a good weekend.
Yep. I mean, look at the guys with Team White Rice, what they were able to do with that car. They grinded and they did the same thing that someone like a Ron Rhodes, the Bruder brothers, what Rob Goss do. You guys did the time and put it in to figure it out. And that's where, the fruits of the labor come in. It's the same thing, like I use Ryan Milliken as an example. People laugh, they're like, oh, look at this goofy dude bringing a diesel car to X275. And when I will never forget when he started going really fast, all of a sudden people are like, oh, wait a second. That ain't right. And he got it figured out. And now it's about gathering that data and understanding what you can extrapolate and go forward with it. You guys got it figured out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's every combination is completely different. Obviously the diesel is way different than, any of the other platforms, but yeah, like our turbocharged small engine package, it's all about, high RPM, making sure you get boost, and a lot of it boils down to now, like just power management, run on the X275 tire. We didn't know what to expect with that tire. Like we'd run drag radial, but it'd been the BFG drag radial 20 years ago. And everybody had said that this new drag radial that Mickey Thompson came out with was phenomenal. And we put it on the car and I mean, it just worked, honestly. It was a lot simpler to figure out than we expected, probably because we just didn't expect the tire to be as good as it is. We just been running slicks for so long and, knew what to expect there. And a radial had never done what they're doing now.
No, the engineers at Mickey Thompson probably after every major event are like, what they did, what? That's not possible. How did they do that? They should be able to do that. And it's interesting too. And I think a lot of people don't seem to forget too, is you guys are doing all this with a clutch in that car too. So that's a completely, another out of left field thing you don't see anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that's, our crew chief, Eric Lazinski, he's always been a clutch guy. We also know like, okay, hey, we have a small engine. It makes no low end torque. It's not going to easily get up on a converter. And we're going to give up power going through a Turbo 400 or a Glide, and through a converter. So we're like the clutch, we can control a bit more, with the transmission, we have, some gearing changes we can make. So it gives us a bit more flexibility. Yeah. It requires somebody maybe with a little bit more knowledge, obviously, to do so. But we felt like the only way to be competitive was to have the manual transmission in the car.
It's interesting to watch how that car leaves and how hard it back halves. Like I couldn't imagine racing against that car. You're just putting along thinking, oh, I got this. Then all of a sudden, the orange choo-choo train just right in your peripheral vision and just drives right by like it's passing you on the freeway.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, turbo cars always mile an hour big, right? I mean, you can see it in Pro Mod and everywhere else. I mean, ET, they don't necessarily ET as well, but they always mile an hour big. So yeah, you may give up a little bit early, but you gain some on the other side of it.
Yeah, it's that top end charge that they have that if you can see the turbo car early in the run, you're in a world of trouble already, and you just might as well just hope something happens, because otherwise you're not going to get around them. And it's again, it hats off to you guys for being able to make that combination work, because I mean it's not easy at all. Look at the stick shift class at at the World Cup this year. Those guys, it was either hit or miss, but when they hit it, it was impressive to watch.
Oh yeah, that's a very wild class too. That's really picked up quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, these guys are running huge turbochargers and manually shifting them,
H pattern nonetheless, H pattern.
Yeah, rolling the gears to get these cars down the track.
I think my favorite one, I love Adkins' car, but at the same time, I love Steele's car just because every time he bangs a gear, that thing is so violent with how it barks and it shoots flames. It's a showstopper.
Yeah. I mean, all of them, the fact that some of these cars are going 6 is just unbelievable, with an H pattern. I mean, these, like, I can remember it's not been very long, maybe a couple of years where like the 6-second zone was like unattainable, and now, yeah, you've got guys literally, manually
Three.
running years.
Well, four. You got that dude in the S10 truck with, with a lot of very stockish parts. That dude does a massive wheel stand one hit, still runs it out at almost 200. Then the next pass, the thing wheel hops so bad that there's like, in a couple spots, I am not exaggerating, there's almost a foot between where the wheel lifted up and came back down, where it's shattering the tires, and it still went 200. I'm like, that thing's making some serious power to do that out the back. It's impressive.
Yep.
What, kind of going off of that too, what was the most impressive thing that you saw at the World Cup this year that just blew your mind?
I mean, definitely that transfer case breaking at the beginning of the event online was one thing I would remember. But let me see. It's kind of a blur. I mean, honestly, I was out there talking to the fans quite a bit. I always notice that the domestic guys bring their A game. And so it's interesting to watch eliminations where those guys are just, running round by round. I feel like us import guys got to work on our consistency. So that
reliability.
I don't even know about reliable. I feel like a lot of the platforms are pretty reliable. I think, we have to, as a group, get together and run these cars in a certain window and get them consistent where they can, all the time. But one of the most impressive runs, probably, I would say Lucimar in, is it the modified? I think it's the modified class. Him setting his personal best, which, I mean, that car's already a rocket ship. So for him to improve on it multiple times was pretty impressive.
Jose Gonzalez in that whatever little tiny red car it was, I think it's some type of Toyota, like to go from driving a big tire pro mod, which is, well, of the two, it's the more stable, which is kind of terrifying in amongst itself. But
we talked about it with him at the event, actually. We talked about it quite a bit, and I was like really surprised. I've known Jose for a long time, and obviously, he's a huge powerhouse, in the outlaw racing and pro mod. I mean, anything that guy sets his mind to, I feel he could win the championship. I think if he had more time to actually go racing, we'd all be in bigger and bigger trouble. But I mentioned to him, like, what got you into the 2JZ, short wheelbase car? I mean, it's the complete opposite of running these pro mods that he has, where they're, like you said, they're stable, full built cars from the ground up, where you're on the short wheelbase cars, you're working around the factory platform, which isn't obviously built to go sixes or any, probably not even nines or tens. And, they're having to wheel them down the road. So, or down the track. So he said it's totally different. He said it's night and day different. I think he kind of knew before he got into the car that it would be totally different, but I think I think he still has the love for pro mods more than anything else.
Yeah. Pro mods are they're a terrifying animal in amongst themselves, because it's just, they're so violent and unruly. I never like standing towards the starting line and taking pictures and, crewing on cars. You'll see some of those, like the Trace Quarters cars, and, some of the other ones get a little squirrely. Being at the top end and taking pictures, I wonder if those dudes got to get fire suits for their balls too, because those things are they're moving around in ways that honestly defy the laws of physics, and they don't lift. I mean, those things will make a huge move, and they're just in it to win it. So I couldn't imagine going from a pro mod to basically a garbage can with a turbo on it, essentially, like size wise.
No, I mean, it's true. I mean, they're probably half the size of a pro mod. I mean, and they're going similar type of ETs, so it's wild. I mean, it's like you said, I mean, it's just the package that the car has, the way the struts are, the short wheelbase. It's just a crazy ride, and you're just gonna literally just slide it around. There's nothing that makes it want to go straight.
I saw one of those cars cross the scale without the driver, and it weighed under 2,000 pounds.
Oh,
I'm like,
easily.
like that's So it's a dragster, but it's half the length, triple the power, and it's got a manual transmission. Sign me up. Sure, that'll be great.
It's more like a go-kart with with a 2,000 horsepower engine.
Yeah, with sticky tires. Well, we're going to take another quick break here on the Dragzine Podcast. When we've come back, we are going to finish things up with Nero here on the Dragzine Podcast.
The new fast supercharger and cam power packages for Chevy LS and Chrysler Gen 3 Hemi engines are perfectly matched systems that combine a specially designed comp cam's low shock technology camshaft with the proven performance of an Edelbrock TVS supercharger. Fast engineers work closely with comp and Edelbrock to eliminate the guesswork out of choosing the right cam for boosted applications. Visit fuelairspark.com for more information on these power packages.
All right, we're back here with Nero from Titan, and you mentioned earlier the trip to Australia that didn't exactly go as planned. And you guys have raced all over the world in different places. And what are some of the cool places you've got to go race, and some of the things that you've got to do thanks to racing?
I mean, we've been to Australia 3 times. One of the best trips, actually, I want to recall, was the second time we went to Sydney, Australia, and I was able to, I think at the time, take my fiance, who's now my wife, there, and we were able to not only enjoy the race, be a part of the event. We were able to zip out and do, vacation that is just still super memorable. Probably one of the best trips we've ever had. So we would never have gone there if it wasn't for racing. So that was probably the highlights for sure.
Australia is like on my big board list of places I want to go just to experience the car culture, because I guess the way the kids have put it these days, they're extra down there. Like, those dudes are like, they are there for horsepower in any format, any way they can, and they have cars that are completely different than what here in the States. I mean, it's pretty awesome to see what they do there. I'm always impressed.
Yeah, it's totally different, but I gotta say, like, all the guys there have the same affinity and love for cars like we do. But yeah, it's a totally different scene, and it's amazing at how many people are into motorsports there for how low the population is. So like, there's the scene is huge, but there's only 30 million people there. We have 10 times the amount of people in the US.
Yeah, and like, their mantra down there is like 2 doors, 4 doors, don't matter. We're sticking the biggest engine we can in this thing and putting a power adder on it. And if you don't like it, go someplace else. I love that attitude.
Yep.
And he said, just seeing the different builds, because we had some of the Australians come up for the 10K drag shootout, and they did a turbo LS because that's what they wanted to do. But the second time around, they were going to do a turbo Barra based engine, because again, it's how it fell with the rules. An inline 6 boosted application fell right in that sweet spot. They probably would have just demolished everybody, because look up Turbo Barra on YouTube, listeners and viewers, and just enjoy the insanity, because you have basically what looks like a rear wheel drive Ford Taurus that's running like 9s. It's amazing.
And one of the other, it's crazy because, now you think about it, like, I actually had a trip that came from ADRL. I had met KH, Sheik Khalid, Alanabi, and this was before anybody had any idea who he is. And he was huge into, the turbocharged petrol motors. And so he told me at ADRL, he brought me in Australia, he goes, I'm building a racetrack. And I go, okay, cool. He goes, in my home country. And I'm like, okay, awesome. He's like, I want you to come. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, for an inaugural race, I want you to come. And I said, okay, I'll go. And I don't think he thought I would actually go. And I'm sure he's asked a lot of people and they didn't end up going. And I ended up going, and it was such a good time. I mean, we went and raced at multiple tracks. We went to Bahrain, where I actually met Ibrahim Kanu. And that's where we became friends and, shared our passion for the Toyota Supras. And that kind of kickstarted a lot of what we did in the early part of this decade. And we went to the hill climb in Abu Dhabi. And that is some wild shit. That is unbelievable. I worried all the way getting to the hills and back because I'm like, if this car breaks down, we're 50 miles from any kind of civilization. So, but yeah, I mean, what a, experience that. And then obviously see the track opening in Qatar. So that was a wild trip too. Yeah,
I've heard some stories about what's gone on some of those trips. And again, like E-Canoe, I just want to go hang out in that dude's garage. Like I have him and I, like, we have the same mindset, except he has piles of money to like come up and like make the bad ideas I have in my mind happen. That's what I love about that guy.
Yeah. I mean, he gets an idea and he just runs with it, and there's nothing else on his mind until the completion of that project. So it's pretty crazy to deal with him. Like he literally is like, Nero, I need this, and it has to be overnighted. And I don't care how you figure it out, you do it. And I know, as a shop owner, most people say that, but then the part never gets installed for months. No, if the minute that part is there, at his shop, it's getting unboxed and put on the car. I mean, literally, I don't even think it's delivered, and I'm seeing pictures he's sending me of it installed. Like it's just until the whole project is complete, each piece of it, he wants to be a part of it. And he's got just, a really good eye for detail. And yeah, it's unbelievable. So we've done so many projects with him, and we still keep doing projects with him. And it's quite a bit of fun.
That Lexus that he built that Ferris brought over here, I shot a feature on that car. And I feel fortunate to do that because I got free reign to crawl around that car, look at whatever I wanted to, take pictures. And they built that all in-house there. Yep. That thing was stunning. Like, that is, you could have taken all of the tags off of that and told someone that was built by Jerry Bickle, and they've been like, oh yeah, that's definitely a Bickle car. And they don't understand that was completely built in-house over there, and they did an amazing job building that car.
Yeah. So they bought over the years literally all the equipment to be able to like service and support and build that whole drag racing side of cars. They're not doing it nonstop, but that was part of Canoe's vision to be able to be a lot more self-sustaining. So when you're over there racing, or when he needs something, it can get done quickly and efficiently with his staff. So he's not having to ship like necessarily cars back to the US to get repaired or built.
Yeah, it's anytime you see the racing over there, it's just it's like a childlike innocence. Like they've discovered drag race, and they're like, oh, I need more of this. And they're like, they don't even like stop at, oh, it's like a 10-second bracket car. It's like, I want to go really fast. I've got the pocketbook. I'm just going to go buy Stevie Fast's orange Mustang, and we're going to race that. Like, it's that level of intensity, and I love it. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, you've seen some of the biggest names, Shannon Jenkins, Tutterow, these guys go over there all the time, huge names here. You'd think they're, as busy as could be here, but they make the time to go over there, so those guys are die hard. And I mean, they're willing to spend the money to be competitive.
And it's drag racing, in my opinion, is it's a great global sport because you can race, anything's a race car if you're brave enough. I mean, that's just the way to look at it. And, I've done a lot of stories, and I've even, worked with the people from Santa Pod, and, just again, their passion there and the stuff that they do. It's really a testament to people that they find a way, because, they don't have the parts availability we have here. So they've got to science their way out of stuff. They've got to figure things out. And it's amazing that there's so many people like us like that to exist in the world. maybe terrifying too. I don't know, but it's definitely awesome to see.
Well, that's the nice thing about, like even like Titan Motorsports or a mail order distributor, like you say, it's really hard to get parts all over the world. And a lot of our business is actually shipping international. So I like that the community's been able to get a lot smaller, but also kind of, bigger as well. With like the formation, like the internet and everybody talking. And now like anything on our Copper Supra is available to anybody around the world to purchase, ship it right to your door. So it's pretty wild. None of that was around, when we got started.
Yeah, I mean, you've been around long enough like me to remember back in the day, it wasn't like, I'll call them credit card cars, where you can go on a Facebook group, ask a question, buy the parts, and if you've got a high enough line of credit, you can build anything your little heart desires. Back in the day, you had to figure this shit out.
Yeah, you did. And you had to have multiple credit cards and watch your budget. And it was crazy. Borrow some money from your friends. And it's a different world now. Yeah, now you can, even like buy turnkey modded cars and even finance them, like lock, stock, and barrel. Like it's happening all the time. So it's wild what the sports, it's gone from something simple to, so many different opportunities for people to get in easily.
Yeah, it's, just even with what the big three are pumping out, I was walking through the Lowe's parking lot the other day. It was one of those new GT, 350 or 500 Mustangs. It looks absolutely gorgeous. You could go down to the dealership and be like, I'll take one of those. And it's,
Yep.
A 10-second car. You go to Dodge dealership, if you really want to get crazy with the cheese whiz and be like, I want that demon looking thing over there, and you're almost running nines. I mean, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around that. My dad just doesn't even, like, his mind was blown because he grew up back in the day. If you had a 13-second car, you were like, that was unheard of. I'm like, a 13-second car now, like we talked about, that's a minivan.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you could call up a company, probably like Titan, and be like, I want to build this. And you guys go, well, you'll need this, 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 and this.
Yep.
When do you want to buy?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happens. It delivers to your door, and you can install it in your garage if you want, or you can obviously, pick a professional to do it. It's wild.
Yeah, and even more so, I remember another issue back in the day was, all you got to find someone to tune the car. Now, remote tuning, like legit remote tuning, not, you send an ECU back and God knows what they do to it. It's like the dude logs in on Teams and on the dyno and tunes, like Shane Tecklenburg from a halfway around the world, or, a Patrick Barnhill halfway. I've seen Patrick Barnhill at a race in South Georgia finishing up for the night, tuning Bodie's car in California for a grudge race. That to me is that's unreal.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's the beauty of like technology today. But yeah, you can literally, like, people ask us like, who do you use to tune? And I'm like, it depends on what you're tuning, because the guy who can tune a Subaru doesn't necessarily be able to tune a Toyota Supra or a Fuel Tech, or a Haul Tech. So depending on like the application, we have the ability to get the best guy for that platform, for that application, to tune the cars remote.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you here. You talked about being you guys distribute parts, you sell parts, you make your own stuff, you help customers out. Is there any projects in mind that a customers come to you with that are just like that you can talk about that are like mind-blowingly gnarly? Like someone that said, I want to put twin LS engines in a Lamborghini, just something ridiculous, which at LS Fest, I saw 2 or 3 turbocharged LS Lamborghinis, which made my cold heart smile for the simple fact that, it's the ultimate hillbilly slap in the face. Like, we're going to take this beautiful Italian design and we're going to put some Merc in it. What are some projects or something you could talk about? Someone's come to you where you're like, oh, that's insane. I love every minute of it.
We've had a lot of crazy requests. I mean, many we turned down. One of the ones we actually did that we always remember, it's almost like it was a blessing and a curse at the same time, is we put a 2JZ in a Prowler.
Oh yeah. Oh, how many shoehorns did that take?
So it's funny because, we measured it out and the engine will fit, it's just a little longer than the V6 that came in it. We're, making the intake manifolds and turbocharger and all of that fit was super tight. But what made it so difficult was the cooling, because that thing has so little amount of frontal area.
Yeah.
To be able to put an intercooler and a radiator and all that stuff and keep it cool was extremely difficult.
The funny thing about taking a car that's not supposed to be turbocharged and turbocharging it is that you don't realize how quickly you start running out of real estate. My 4th Gen F body, I'm like, oh, everybody's done this. This shouldn't be that. Wait a second. You start looking, you're like, man, where am I going to put this at? It becomes a game of automotive Jenga, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, we do a lot of these R8s and Lamborghinis now on the other side of things. And yeah, I mean, they're twin turbo. We literally got to pull the whole car apart just about to fit every cooler, the fuel system, the turbochargers. You're retroing the whole car to go from naturally aspirated to turbocharged. So it's pretty wild. I mean, it's obviously a lot more entailed than just modding an existing turbocharged car.
Yeah. You have to really have an attention for detail and a certain level of engineering prowess to make sure things are going to fit, and you don't create a maintenance nightmare later, or you solve one problem and create 5 more, because it's I think we've all been down that road working on a race car where you think something's going to be absolutely awesome, and then after the end of the day you're like, oh well, I've just now literally painted myself into a corner 3 different ways.
Yep.
And with a Lamborghini, that's another one of those cars where I didn't understand how tight the quarters were until I saw the Lamborghini engine sitting beside said Lamborghini. I'm like, you're going to fit that in there? Like, are you a wizard? How does that work?
Yeah.
Now, I like to have fun with my guests once again, throw some curveball questions at them. So to close things out here, you have to start a brand new company that's not Titan Motorsports. It could be Schmeiten Motorsports, but it can't be Titan Motorsports, and it can't be based around imports at all. What platform are you going to base something around, and why are you going to use that platform?
So you mean like another company similar to Titan, like selling parts, motorsports?
Yeah. Just it's not in the import world. It's in another part of the multiverse where you have to go exist over there and do it.
I mean, the truck market has been booming, for the last decade easily. And with, companies like Ford with the Raptor and the TRX out there, I think Toyota's going to play in that field a little bit with a Tundra, a TRD version of the Tundra. I think that's a great market to be in right now. I would have to consider definitely that side of the business.
Trucks modded tastefully, let me put that word in there, tastefully modded trucks, correctly modified trucks are amazing. I enjoy that's, the truck class at Ducks Race, seeing some stuff like, the old, mid 90s C1500 Chevy trucks that are loaded with a turbo engine and stuff like that. Yeah, that's cool. And of course, we're spoiled nowadays. Like you said, the TRX and the Raptor, again, that's what would you have thought, 10 years ago, we would have stuff like that roaming around the streets openly from a manufacturer.
Yeah. And they mod super, super easy, super well, yeah, I mean, who would have known, you could literally drive it on road, off road. The trucks have come a long way in a very short period of time.
I'm a huge fan of the Raptor. I'm disappointed that GM didn't create something somewhat similar. They missed the boat there for sure. And like I said, the seeing those trucks out and seeing some of the truck market out there, because the truck guys are not afraid to spend money at all when they're building something.
They basically are like, I want it and let's do it and charge the card. Yeah,
literally. And they will. There's a place here locally that I'll give them a shout out. Brady and his family up at Pickups Plus Cars and Trucks. They do some. They get a lot of customers that come in that's their mindset, that they're like, I want a truck that's going to do this. It's going to cost that. I don't care what it costs. This is what I want. And then they show back up and they pick it up. That's a shop's dream, right?
Yep.
Well, Nero, our time here is coming to an end on the podcast, Dragzine Podcast. And I like to give my guests their opportunity to do all their plugs, channel their inner John Force and thank everybody and just run wild on the show any way they see fit. So the floor is yours, my friend. Thank you. You need to tell people where they can find more about you and just, what you got going on social media, whatever you need to talk about.
Titan Motorsports is on Facebook, Instagram. I don't want to thank our staff. I mean, we have some of the best guys here and girls. Like we wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff. I wouldn't be on this podcast if I wasn't for the team that's behind me. And that goes with our partners too. Companies like Ferreira, been there from them day one. They've sponsored us for 20 years. Precision Turbo, CP, Carrillo. And the list goes on and on. ARP, all those teams, all those companies behind it are willing to do whatever they got to do to help us succeed. So we're quite fortunate because of that. And we don't take any of our partnerships or anything lightly.
Awesome. And like I said, make sure you check out Titan on social media. They always got cool stuff there. Like I like anything loud, fast, and dangerous. So I'm into imports, domestics. It doesn't matter if it's got an engine and it's going to scare me. I'm all in. And you guys do some cool stuff. And of course, I've got to thank my sponsors for the show: Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, ProCharger, Holly, MSD, Flowmaster, Mosier Engineering, Comp Cams, Elderbrock, Fuel Air Spark Technology, Manley, JE Pistons, and Dart. Nero, it was awesome having someone like you on the show. I greatly appreciate you coming on and look forward to seeing you at the track soon.
Okay, see you soon.